Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Since recently I'm preparing for a very important tournament, I won't be able to follow the footsteps of these recent top events. I won't be able to make videos about commenting about these top events, recent top events, and I am pre-recording this series, and this series are about games and positions where my coach has taught us at my chess school. And my coach is an international master, very strong, and he carefully choose all of these games and positions where it can teach us a lot of things, openings, middle games, and end games. And for me, I think it's great for me to share with you guys, and also a great way for me to review the things that I have learned at school. All right. Now today we'll be taking a look at a game played by two well-known top grandmasters. White is Vladimir Kramnik, and black is Hikaru Nakamura. Now, this game was actually played in 2011, the year that I was born in. And this game is actually the reason that my coach chose this game is because of the opening mainly. My coach usually chooses games where it has to do with something that he is about the opening that he recently is teaching us. Just recently, my coach is teaching us about the King's Indian defense. And so this game, it's about the King's Indian defense, the opening. And as for some of you guys who are Hikaru's fans, I think you are all sure that he plays the King's Indian, of course, in some occasions, some games. Also in classical games as well. And in this game, he did that. Alright, let's quickly take a look at this game. d4, knight f6, c4, g6. The opening is just very standard. The King's Indian defense, no doubt. Bishop e2, e5, and short castle. Now here you can actually also go for other options like d5 or bishop e3, just to quickly acknowledge that to you guys. And after short castle, knight c6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. I mean, this is all the main line. This is something that you should know even if you're not playing the King's Indian defense or not playing as white in this position. Here white, Kramnik here, choose to go d5. He can also go for bishop e3 or to open up the center with d takes c5. There are many options here. d5 is the main line. Kicking the knight, and the knight of course goes back to knight e7, and here Kramnik went for the most aggressive idea, which is to go b4. And I think all of you guys know that in the King's Indian defense, white attacks on the queen side. In general, of course, white attacks on the queen side with b4, c5 ideas, a4 coming up, pushing the pawns, and black attacks on the king side with f5, f5, f4, g5, g4 ideas. It's just it's a matter of speed basically between black and white, the pawns. But sometimes also in some occasions you can switch sides as well. White can sometimes also attack on the king side, and black can also switch to the queen side. But this just happens really rarely. Most of the times it just happens like this: white on the queen side, black on the king side. Alright, here black goes knight h5. Of course, there are also a5 ideas. a5 is also the main lines, and then knight h5 is the other main line. There are some sidelines, or not the most popular lines, like knight d7, knight e8, but all of these knight moves are all preparing for f5, as you can see. Here in the game, knight h5 was played by Hikaru. Of course, he knows how to play it. And c5 was played immediately by Kramnik. He is actually going really aggressive. I mean, he should have, he can also go rook e1 basically just to develop the rook, or even just go, a4, something like this, or knight d2 just to, maneuver the knights and all the pieces. But instead, in the game, he played c5, which is also actually one of the main lines. And of course, here as black, you don't react to c5. Of course, if you take on c5, this is just something that never happens in the King's Indian defense. Only probably about 0.1% happens, d takes c5. After b takes c5 here, and I mean, white's pawns are just pushing up the board with no challenges at all, and black cannot allow that. In the game, knight f4 was played. This is the idea of knight h5, of course, to jump the knight to f4. And in the game, a4 was played. Now, if you take on f4, which is not good, there's now e takes f4, even though you have slightly damaged black's pawn structure, but you see that now black is, the bishop is like this big down was open to the bishop, and it is pinning the knight as well. Like, it's attacking the knight and also pinning the knight and the rook, and it's not that easy for white to get out of it. And also f5 is coming, something like this. That is why in the game here, Kramnik didn't take on f4, which is the correct decision, and he played a4, still focusing on the queen side where he should be focusing on, and here black went f5. Now, worth notice is that some of you guys might be told that you have to be aware of like knight g5 ideas, knight e6, and it's always best for you to go h6 first and then f5. But here, if you go f5 and white goes knight g5, there's actually this is just some rare situations where you can actually just allow knight g5, knight e6. You can just go h6 here, because basically the knight cannot go to e6 because the knight is still controlling the e6 square. Like before, if the knight were on, for example, h5 or something like this, you take and there's d takes e6, you are unable to actually win this e6 pawn, because like queen c, there's something like knight d5. But right now, the big difference is that the knight is on f4. Alright, but if you take on f4, well, actually, you have no time to take on f4, because if you take here, there's now e takes f4, and both of your knights are under attack, and you can just resign the game, basically. And that is why in the game, Hikaru is not worried about knight g5, and Kramnik, of course, saw that and still pushes on the queen side with bishop c4, which is actually very logical. And after f takes c4, opening up the center. Actually, in this position, usually in the King's Indian defense, black goes f4 and then g5, g4. I mean, closing up the center, of course, and then just starting pushing the pawns on the king's side. But actually, in this situation, you see that white is much faster on the attack on the queen side. Like, compared to the speed of the attacking moves, white is much faster than black is. And this means that if black is trying to compete against white with speed, black is definitely going to lose. This means that black needs to open up the center to create more action in order to, first of all, develop more pieces and trying to cut back on the speed. And that is what Hikaru is definitely doing here with f takes e4. And of course, knight takes e4, and now h6 is played, because this is now very necessary. If you just, for example, you just play something like a6, of course, this is a bad move, but I'm just trying to emphasize. Now, there's probably something like knight g5, and if you go h6, wait a second. Probably, you can actually take on f4 first, I think, and then go knight g5, knight e6, something like this. Like right now, if you go knight g5, there's h6, and if you go knight e6, now there's actually, the main problem is that there's now d5, because these two knights are, controlling the d5 square. But what I'm trying to say is that h6 is always a move that is really useful, necessary. Because what if someday, the knight is not on f4 anymore, and white will be going knight g5, knight e6, and at that point, it is going to be really, that will be really troubling for black. And now h6 also supports g5, g4 at some point. In the game, of course, h6 was played, and now rook e1, very logical, developing the rook as well as protecting the e4 knight, and after bishop g4, pinning the knight. Well, actually, I think your h3 is a slightly more accurate move, because you are, preventing bishop g4. And you might be asking, why not go bishop g4 immediately? Well, actually, bishop g4 immediately is okay, but I guess Hikaru just wants to play more solid and just do the things that he must do first, which is to go h6 first, prevent any knight g5's threats, and then go for bishop g4. And in the game rook e3 was played, this is actually a really standard defense in the King's Indian defense. You should know that white goes a4 not only to push the pawns on the queen side to attack, to like support the attack like b4 c6, but also to to open up this a3 square for the rook to sometimes get the rook to a3 and protect everything on the king side as well on the third rank. So you should always take note of that as black and also as white. So as white, you should always keep in mind that rook a3 is also like always an option if something happens on the third rank. For example, here when black is pinning the knight on f3, the f3 knight has a lot of pressure and you defend it with rook a3. In the game g5 was played, you see that h6 not only defends but also supports g5. h3 was played, and now bishop h5. Of course, you don't take on f3 because this is such an excellent bishop, and if you take, you'll just allow white's pieces to activate. And after rook f3, I mean, without this excellent bishop on g4, all of the rest of the pieces, especially this g7 bishop, are just way too passive. And white should be much, much better on the queen side too, like on the attack. Alright, that's why in the game bishop h5 was played, keeping the pin on the board. And after bishop takes f4, finally Kramnik cannot stand it anymore. He finally took on f4. And after rook takes f4, of course, if you take with the pawns, you might say e takes f4. This looks good, opening up the diagonal for my bishop. At least finally now it can get some activity. But what you should know is that this bishop, first of all, doesn't really do anything on the on this diagonal. I mean, this just like it can't really attack anything. And also there's like c takes d6, and after c takes d6, a very nice tricky move here is actually, just to go either knight c5 or just go knight d6. Knight d6, the main point is that after queen d6, there's now rook takes e7, and I mean, this is just like, even though the eval bar says this is not something completely winning for white, but in human eyes, this is just disastrous. Alright, let's go back and see what happened in the game. Of course, taking with the g-pawn is slightly better than taking with the e-pawn, but of course, you're just blockading this f-file of the rook, and the f3 knight will be like out of pressure, like no pressure at all after g takes f4. That is why you take with the rook, still putting the pressure, like continually putting the pressure on the f3 knight. g3 was played, kicking the rook away, and rook f8 back. Very logical. And in the game, a5 was played. Kramnik says, okay, I think on the king side, I basically have already defended everything, and now I'm just gonna keep following my plan on the queen side and just push my pawns. And what are you gonna do? And here, Hikaru said, I'm just going to go for this very quiet and solid move. And can you see what that move is? It's actually something that always happens in the King's India defense when you're getting away from a specific diagonal. And the move is king h8. You're getting away from this diagonal because there's always times where white can start sacrificing pieces and threaten some d6 ideas with check, like discover checks. And it's always good for black to be aware of that. And first of all, just get the king away to safety. And here in the game, king g2 was played. White is also defending all of the pieces. But already after king g2, this position is close to equalization, and black is starting to have some chances. In the game, rook b8 was played. And this is a move where actually black, if you're not a strong player, you might not be able to find this. And of course, Hikaru is one of the strongest players in the world, and he knows why he needs to play rook b8. When you're as black in this position, rook b8 is a move that usually don't come to your mind at all. You just always think of knight f5 ideas, to go knight e4. Of course, not right now because there's something like g4, but you just have ideas like this. But sometimes you always have to switch sides and plans as well. And here you go rook b8. And the fact is that you're going for b6 on the next move. And the reason that you're going b6 is that if you don't go b6, white is just going to push all of the pawns on the queen side. And that will be a disaster. Rook b8, and after queen d2, b6 was played. And after takes, knight here. Actually, Kramnik, finally, he cannot stand this equalized position anymore. Too solid for him. I mean, usually he is a really solid player. He always, his, what's the word? His chess, like the style is kind of like usually solid, but now he is going really like aggressive, and here he started to find tactics, which is actually fine and pretty like a dubious move actually, but it's fine. And he played this knight f g5 move. Not the best move, of course, giving black now a lot of like chances. And after h takes g5, queen takes g5, and bishop g6. Now, the main point is that white does have some compensation for that, like sacrificed piece. First of all, the pawns, like also the activeness of the pieces, as well as the pawns are pushed really high on the queen side. But let's see how the game continued. First of all, c takes d6, and after c takes d6 here, rook a7 was played, going to the 7th rank. And after rook c8, Hikaru says, okay, if you're going to take my knight, I'm going to take your bishop. It's a free trade, like it's a trade. And here, Kramnik just took on e7 after rook c4. f3 was played. Actually, this is just a pretty like equalized position. If both sides played really like the accurate moves, it should be a draw. But after rook c2, king g1, rook c8 back, here like everything is still fine. And after rook a1, rook f7, queen takes g6, well, sacrificing another piece actually. After queen g6, queen e7, but the main point is that there's now knight g5. Well, actually, you can also play knight d6, which is pretty drawish after this move. I mean, you just go, for example, like rook cf8, and after take everything, you just trade. And this position, I think at least white won't be able to lose. White is up like 3 pawns. Yeah, 3 pawns. Very healthy pawns. And this position should be a clean draw. But in the game, however, after knight g5, like knight d6 wasn't played by Kramnik, but instead he tried to play knight g5, thinking that he might have some chances. But unfortunately, this is the start of disaster for white. And after queen h7, king f8, the king is just perfectly safe. And after knight e6 check, white only has a couple of checks before it runs out. And after king e8, queen h5, bishop f6, g4. And here queen b7 was played, attacking the d5 pawn, and already everything is just going really bad for white. Here g4 is actually the blunder that Kramnik made. If he had just played something like, you know, queen g6, threaten some queen g8 threats, and just leave the pin there, just going back and forth, this should have been a draw. But I think even here Kramnik was thinking that he can win this position, and he played g4, starting to push the pawns. But after like a few moves like this, he is just like, his king is also in trouble, and he is just like up, like he is now only up 2 pawns compared to the position we've just saw where he is up 3 pawns. But like also he is just losing all the pawns, and here he resigned the game, and Hikaru won. I'm actually not sure which tournament this is, but of course it's some sort of classical games, and Hikaru actually played pretty well in this game, and he actually had an accuracy of 95.0, as you can see. And yeah, this whole game was played really well by him, as like especially the King's Indian defense that he like played. You guys can really like learn a lot of things from these top Grandmaster games. And I think Hikaru's game art is like also like really inspiring for us, because he shows many like ideas that are not that hard to understand, but also makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this game and learned a lot of things from it as well. And thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!